The pervasive interconnectedness among intelligences or conscious beings implies the individuality of each connected being, but it also implies the possibility of a group identity, also known as collective consciousness or group mind. Dr. Dean Radin has found that there is such a thing as a group consciousness. There's a broad spectrum as to what is meant by group mind or collective consciousness. At one end of the spectrum is the idea that collective consciousness is simply a set of shared beliefs. Of course, sharing common beliefs, ideas, and desires can unify a people. This is the whole idea of the Constitution of the United States. At the other end of the spectrum, and the meaning we will primarily consider, is collective consciousness as a unity of conscious minds. Often, this is called a group mind. The group mind, in reality, becomes a single conscious entity. This single conscious entity has the power to form a unified field of consciousness, for the lack of a better term. As the primary influence of consciousness is one of coherence or organization, a group of individuals can collectively focus their attention on one common object and thus affect that object. The power of the unifying field is proportional to the number in the group and the strength of their combined focus, among other things. Now, we really don't have a precise word to define the concept of collective consciousness and its physical effects. Science uses the term field to describe invisible forces such as gravity and magnetism. Broadly speaking, a field is simply an area in which a particular effect is manifest. For our purposes, field consciousness is an area where the effects of a group mind exist. Or, as Dean Radin put it, it is a continuum of non-local intelligence which permeates time and space. This is the very idea of panpsychism, which we have previously discussed, and the light of Christ, which is in everything and fills the immensity of space. This continuum of consciousness, or field consciousness, when focused as a unity, has a greater power to affect matter than does an individual conscious being. This enhanced power has been demonstrated in numerous experiments. The Global Consciousness Project has studied the effect focused attention, not intention, has upon random systems, particularly random number generators or RNGs. The project has placed scores of RNGs throughout the world. These devices generate either ones or zeros randomly. Over time, the ratio between ones and zeros should be about 50-50. However, this ratio changes to a more ordered one, favoring ones or zeros during large-scale events witnessed simultaneously by millions of people throughout the globe. Dean Radin explains.
The Global Consciousness Project is an evolutionary step out of 50 years of prior experiments. The experiments were looking at the relationship between mind and matter, and specifically intention and the behavior of the physical world. I mean, it all devolves back into the question, what is the role of mind in the physical world? Then in the 1990s, Roger Nelson at Princeton got the idea that maybe intention was only a piece of the puzzle, and maybe attention was also important. That the act of attending, which we think of internally, attending is a kind of coherent mental state. You're focusing in on one thing. And if we can think of that as not simply being in your head, but being out there as well, then when you attend to something, it changes. and it changes in the direction of coherence. So if the target of your attention is randomness, then a cohered random system is, by definition, more orderly, becomes ordered. And so you can detect that order through statistics easily.
The first experiment of this type used meditation groups. After hundreds of tests, it was found that RNGs became less random due only to the meditation of the group, attention and not intention.
So he started doing experiments where he'd take a random number generator, an electronic circuit, and put it in the vicinity of a group that was meditating, thinking that this would create a large amount of coherent attention. Sometimes people knew the random generator was there, and sometimes they didn't know. And he wanted to see whether the randomness would become orderly during the meditation. And after hundreds of such tests by Roger and me and a bunch of our colleagues, we came to the conclusion that it does become less random in a context where we can infer that there's mental coherence going on, sometimes due only to attention.